everything in that particular area. Alternatively, you have a sales-ranked ABC cycle counting program. We'll talk about more of that in just a few moments. The physical area cycle count method. Once again, we're just dividing things into a small section. Physical space of some sort. Could be by product category, material, cost types, any one of those things. You tend to need to do your high volume moving areas far more frequently. To give you an example of how that would work, for the frequency of how often you would do that, the APIX organization recommends you count your entire inventory 4 times a year. So if we had 8,000 items and 306 days of the year to operate, we would need to count 26 items per day, 4 times a year, would be 104 products counted per day. That's a lot of products to count an individual day. If we look at our sales ranking method, we're going to add a little bit more logic to how we're going to go about our counting. In doing our sales rank presentation, we're going to use the Pareto principle, or Pareto law as it's called. It's going to be based on the 80-20 principle. So 80% of your sales are made up of 20% of your products. So those 20% of your items you need to account for far more frequently than those other items you don't sell nearly as frequently. That's also known as ABC cycle counting. So your A items, your top 80% of sales. Your B items, maybe the next 10 or 15. Your C items, a much smaller number. And your X items, that few remainder, that slow-moving inventory you just can't seem to get rid of. With our sales ranking method, you're going to count those faster, high-volume items a lot more frequently than those low-volume, low-dollar items. We're going to make sure that you're using a schedule which makes sense. So APIX recommends 4 to 6 times a year. So those A-ranked items we're going to count at least 4 times a year. Those B items 3 times per year, those C items twice a year, and those X items at least once a year. So if we're looking at account size using the model we used for the physical, we have 8,000 total item numbers. Our A items represent 1,600. If we have to count, say, 6 times a year, that's 9,600 counts. Our B items, so on and so forth. As we come down through there, if we have those total of 24,000 counts and 306 business days in a year, that's 78 items to count per day. What does this type of ABC schedule look like on a calendar? When we look at that, we'd count our A items approximately 4 to 6 times a year. Our B items gets the treatment on the schedule 3 times. Our C item twice, and ultimately our X ranked items once. One key thing is that after all of the work of a physical count or a cycle count, there's a ton of variance reporting that needs to be analyzed. The key thing is we want to make sure you're identifying your problems. After all, it doesn't matter how big or small your physical count is, it's still an undertaking to get it all done and finished up. We need to find out what caused the errors. We need to identify the root cause. Was it lack of process control? If we fix the underlying problem, train our individuals more, is it going to make it easier? So maybe someday we could eliminate a physical count altogether and just do small cycle counts to keep our inventory more accurate. So once again, after completing a cycle count, we should look to find the errors on your variance reports. We want to research the error, identify the root cause of the error, and of course we want to work to eliminate the cause of the error. Now we're going to move on to cycle counting as it relates directly to WiSys and how we're going to go ahead and do a cycle count and see how that everything is affected in Macola and what have you. So when we look at cycle counting, this year we've redesigned cycle counting. We spent a substantial amount of time talking to our customers about their inventory processes, what areas needed improvement. We recently updated our cycle count and really enhanced the process. We've added options and more ways of doing it to make it easier and faster than it ever was in the past. We've also added the ability to cycle count pallets. We added this pallet layer and package layer to our software. By adding it, we've created a faster way to transact throughout the warehouse. Essentially, instead of transacting by item number, lot number, bin number, quantity, we're allowing you to scan a license plate on a package or pallet and immediately recognize what item, lot number, quantity is on that particular package and allows you to transact by telling it to move it to a new location. By doing so, we allow you to take away that 80% of all that data entry when doing a transaction. So what better way to perform a cycle count than scan the LPN and verify that it's all there? We also added the ability to handle serial numbers in a more elegant fashion. We're finding that a lot of our customers weren't adding new serial numbers if they'd scanned them during a physical inventory. Those weren't making their way back into the Macola database. So we've automated our serialized cycle counting to ensure the serial number layer is updated automatically. There's no more manually adjusting your serial numbers. We're going to take care of that for you in an automated fashion. Alrighty. Today we're going to go through and we're going to walk you through the inventory of our WiSys custom shop. At our WiSys custom shop, we make hot rods. We have all kinds of parts thrown everywhere, and we're constantly losing inventory. Our factory is so large, we have trouble keeping track of it all. The first step in our cycle or physical count procedure is we need to go inside of Macola, and we need to select a tag count. You're going to do this. In this example, we're using a Macola ES screen. You would simply use the identical screen inside of progression. Our software will function exactly the same way, regardless of if you're using ES or progression. Or our cycle count batch selection. Go through and fill out the form exactly the way you would in Macola. And if you need help with this, don't ever hesitate to call your Macola reseller or WiSys support. We're more than happy to help you learn about each one of the options on the screen and how to best utilize those in your individual unique situation. Today we're going to go ahead and cycle count our Group A items. Our Group A items are made up of a rotor, an oil filter, our engine, a box of bolts, and a pallet full of tires. The first thing we're going to do today is we're going to count our non-bin bolt. This bolt is a standard item, nothing special about it. We'll go ahead and bring up our handheld software. Inside of our handheld software, this is our Pocket ES handheld software, I've got 4 icons. Now traditionally when you're doing a cycle count, you'll pick the method that works best for your organization, and your employees won't have all the extra icons here. But in order to demonstrate these today, we've got all 4 cycle count options immediately on the screen for our review. I'm going to go ahead and start off by we're going to select cycle or physical count by tag. Assuming you print all those tags inside of Macola, you have tag numbers associated with each transaction. We're going to go ahead and select our batch ID by hitting the ellipsis. When we do so, it's immediately going to show us the batch and how many items we're expected to count. From here, we can enter or scan in our tag number, and it's going to bring up the rest of the information. It's going to immediately return that the tag number should have the item number bolt on there. We're going to go ahead and enter our counted quantity. We're going to enter in 100. From here, you would continue to count, adding in the next tag, and your count. As you do so, the Macola IM tag file is being updated in real time. There's no more pulling out workbooks and needing to fill in all that information after the fact. We're going to jump over here to cycle or physical count by item. We're going to go ahead and select our batch again from the list. Next, we're going to take our barcode scanner, and I'm going to scan the box of bolts sitting on my desk. When I do so, it immediately returns the item number, a description of the item, the unit of measure that it's stocked in, and it shows you that I just counted 1 tag at a quantity of 100. So now I know that when I complete this transaction, I'm creating a new tag. When that new tag is created inside of Macola, it's going to add together the previous tag along with any extra tags that are created to get your final count for posting. And all of the variance reports we're going to show you in a little bit will have those numbers already summarized for you. I'm going to go ahead and enter in another 100, and we can continue to do that until we have enough items counted. Okay? We're going to move on to our next item to count. We're going to go ahead and count our oil filter. This is a standard binned item. We're going to come over here and scan our oil filter, and you'll notice that the screen immediately updated when I scan the item number. Some things disappeared, some words may have changed on the screen. But the next item that it's asking for is it's going to ask us for our bin. So we're simply going to select the bin that the item is stocked in, and then immediately enter the quantity that we're counting. When we hit enter, the cycle count screen will clear, and we can continue to process those items. Complete that by moving on to the next item. When we move over to counting by lots, in this case we're going to use a binned and lotted item. So we're going to open back up our PocketES software, and we're going to go ahead and count that binned and lotted item. But this time we're going to go ahead and count it using cycle count by bin. We'll start off just as we did previously by selecting our batch ID. This time, when selecting our batch ID, rather than entering in the item, we're going to enter in the bin. Now we've shrunk the list of available items that are already there, and we have to provide the item to validate that that item is in that bin, and then the lot code associated with it. Okay. On doing so, it immediately looked at the tag number for us. So our tag number is now displayed. So when I type in the quantity, it's going to immediately update to let us know that that item number, bin, and lot number are recorded against that tag. Okay. Serialized items are a little different. As part of our enhancement this year, we made it so it's more like a grocery store scanner. So when we go out here to scan our item, we're going to jump back over to physical count by item. That's just my preference. I'll select our batch, and in doing so, it's going to ask us to go ahead and scan our item number. When I scan the item number, it's immediately going to ask us for a bin. You'll notice, unlike the lot, it didn't prompt us for a serial or lot number. I'm going to go ahead and scan our bin, and in doing so, it brings up a new screen. It shows you the tag number that we're looking for this particular bin and item, and now we have to scan each serial number that sits in the bin. Scan my first serial number. You'll notice that underneath the word serial number, it immediately shows us that 1 was counted. When I scan the second one, you'll notice that 2 are counted. I also have this extra button in the lower left-hand corner, which will show us exactly how many are counted. So it shows you who counted the tag and what serial numbers were recorded. When you're all done here, go ahead and click the close button, and it takes us back to our physical count by item. We'll move on to our palletized item next. We'll go ahead and show you our lotted, binned, and palletized item, our pallet full of tires, by going into LPN physical inventory. When I go into LPN physical inventory, we'll once again select our batch ID. From here, I'll go ahead and scan our item number, our bin number, and then I'll scan our LPN number. Once I do so, it will immediately bring up the item number, the description, the lot number. All of the information that it knows about what's on that LPN will be displayed, with the exception of the quantity of that item. From here, we'll go ahead and enter in the quantity that we want to count. So we're going to go ahead and type in 4. When we type in 4 and press the Enter key, it will clear and allow us to scan our next LPN number. When I scan the next license plate number, in this particular case, this item is not stocked in this particular bin, so it's coming up as an extra tag. From here, we continue to add in the additional information by typing in the count quantity and depressing Enter. That is cycle counting on our handhelds. We're going to move over and talk about our variance reporting. Our variance reporting is inside of our Agility software. For those of you not familiar with our Agility software, it's the desktop component of WiSys. It does a lot of different things, but today we're going to focus on just these options here under the inventory section, specifically those under inventory counting. We're going to talk about all of our pre-post reports. I have never talked to a controller who likes flipping through page upon page of all of those reports trying to find the specific cause for a variance. What we've done is we've created some nice reports for you here, and we'll go ahead and show you these reports. I'm going to go ahead and start with our pre-post audit by quantity variance. So over here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to select our batch. When I select our batch, we have a quantity variance here. This quantity variance is plus or minus how many pieces you want to look for discrepancies with. I'll go ahead and just enter in 1 and press OK. Immediately upon here, we can sort on our items and see additional detail. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the bolt we counted a few moments ago. When I type in bolt, you'll notice that all of my other items disappeared, and we filtered just on bolt. You also have the item option of sorting in ascending or descending order by any particular column you see on the screen. You can always add additional columns and summary totals at any time. When I select the bolt item, down below immediately populates detailed tag counts. So these are the transactions we did on the gun. The first one being for 100, the second one being for 1,000. You'll notice the tag numbers are displayed. We also see the frozen quantity, the count variance when the transaction occurred, and the dollar variance. When we come back over here, we can also come up here and maybe do some investigation. Why are we off by that much? If we hit the inventory transaction button, we can see all of the inventory transactions inside of Macola that occurred for this particular item, and any relevant GL distributions for that transaction. To move on to the next report, we have our pre-post audit by cost variance. This one works very much the same way as the other one, whereas we were looking for a particular dollar. In this case, we're looking for a particular, instead of looking for a particular quantity offset, we're looking for a dollar value plus or minus whatever value we put in here. So we're looking for items that are greater than $1,000 difference. When we do so, we can immediately sort the dollar value difference, ascending or descending, however we want to see that, and then we'll go ahead and filter on our V12 motor. When we focus on our V12 motor, we see that we have a lot of additional information here. So we can, as previous, view the inventory transactions. You'll notice down here we can see the tag numbers associated with it, but we also get to see the bin numbers that were counted. When I go up and down here, we have some extra options here. We have a Mark as Counted button. The Mark as Counted button is just like that counting extra tag feature inside of Macola. And we have the serial number tags. When I click on the serial number tags, we bring up the batch ID, and it also shows you the serial numbers scanned on that particular tag. Basically where we're getting the quantity on that tag. This is the detail underneath. We also have a pre-post audit by individual item, bin, and lot. So if we come in here and we run this, we'll go ahead and filter on our rotor. When we click on our rotor, we immediately get all of that detail that we had before. We get the option to clear the tag count. If we want to basically clear it and say, nope, there's a mistake, we're going to send somebody out there to recount it, you can mark any uncounted tags as counted from this screen, or drill in if there are any associated serial number tags or LPN tags for this transaction. I'm going to go ahead and jump up here and close out some of these screens for us here. I'm going to jump back to the serial number section now. So now that we've added that additional ability to count serial numbers, let's check to see if we have any problems with it. So immediately when I come back over here, we see some alerts. We see that we scanned some serial numbers in some places, and we didn't scan a particular serial number. So now we need to know if we need to go back out there and count them. So without having to go into the detail of a report, why is our count off, we were able to come in here and basically see what serial numbers were newly created or will be newly created, and which items are going to be deleted, which serial numbers will be deleted from the system, giving us an immediate view as to what happened during our cycle count. We'll come back over here to serial count variance. So very much like the other variances we had, we have our variance count here. So immediately when we bring up our variance, we see all the detail that we saw before, the ability to recount the serial numbers, and when we click on the individual tags, we see the detailed information underneath them. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our palletization and packaging and look at the LPN problems to review. So just like that, you'll notice that we have LPN problems here. I'm going to go ahead and expand out this column. You'll see that some say LPN not counted, some say wrong bin. All of this shows us that one of the layers in transactioning wasn't completed properly and requires additional detail. Down at the bottom, we have a Make Adjust button. The Make Adjust button will essentially allow you to correct a tag that may be incorrect or send somebody out there with a handheld to rescan the item. We'll go ahead and bring up our LPN bin variance with recount, and in doing so, it'll bring up and show us all of our different bins that we have product in. And we'll go ahead and bring up our bin P1. When we click on bin P1, we'll immediately see all the bin detail and the tag detail of what was scanned on that particular item when we scan the LPN number. We also have the ability to recount that bin, voiding any tags associated with our bin P1. There's a lot of different options here for all of these variance reports, and all of these screens in Agility can be tweaked and customized and laid out the way you want to see it to make sure that you can complete your inventory quickly and accurately without having to flip through a ton of pages. We'll jump back over here and finish out your posting. The next step we have is we're going to jump over into Macola. The Macola progression menus will be very similar. We're just going to go and do our post count tag once you've completed counting all your items. It'll post all of your variants. Once you've completed that, we're going to jump back over to Agility, and we have some cleanup to do. Once the Macola inventory is posted, it effectively will update your quantity on hand in your item location file. It'll update your lot quantity, but it doesn't add those serial numbers in. So we have a process here that we'll run to add all those serial numbers in. Same thing for pallets. We have all of these pallets that we need to post. When we post the LPN tags, it's going to go ahead and update everything and move all that information to history. We'll jump back over here to our slide, and that concludes our demonstration of inventory counting inside of WiSys on Pocket ES and Macola. If you ever need any help or have any questions with cycle counting, please don't hesitate to contact support@wisys.com, or if you're new to Pocket ES and the additional WiSys applications out there for shipping or manufacturing, please don't ever hesitate to call our sales department. They appreciate that a lot at sales, or email them at sales@wisys.com. If there are any questions, we're happy to spend the next few minutes here answering any questions you may have.
Thanks, Justin. That was great. We have a large number of people on the call, and so if you have questions, there's a question area over on your little screen on the right, and you can ask your questions there. I've been answering a couple that I've gotten. I had a couple of really good questions. One was, does the batch you create have to include all the items you'll be scanning with the guns? And the answer to that is no, we can create extra tags on the fly. So you do not have to include every item that you're going to count if you end up counting a few more. Let me see, what else did I have? I don't know that I had anything else that was application. Let's see. We are an A-scan user and use Intermec CK31s. Well, they work with WiSys. And I'm going to answer that, and then Justin, you can chime in. I believe not, because we support Motorola 9090s and 9190s. Justin, do you want to make a comment about the Intermec guns?
Without having one in our possession, we really can't make a decision formally one way or the other, but we prefer the Windows CE operating system, and there's a greater chance that if they're running on the Windows CE, either version 5 or version 6, that there may be an option to run those guns.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Can you do serial counting without bins? Justin?
Serial counting without bins is possible. It'd just be a slightly different transaction. The serial number is essentially cross-referencing the item and counting those. I don't think there would be a problem at all in doing so.
Okay. All right. I have one questioner asking whether we have this solution available in Spanish, and we do not currently have a Spanish version. I don't know what kind of work it would take to do that. You do have control over prompts and things like that, so I think it's plausible, but we do not currently have a Spanish version available.
All of the
Justin?
All of the items we showed you today were done in our Visual Form Studio application. Those forms are made available to you if you guys have the inventory counting process. We could work with you to help provide the translation and basically tailor the software with whatever literals you would want displayed on those.
Right. I have a question about what comes with the update, and with the update you get all of the agility grids. If you need to do the serial cycle counting or the pallet cycle counting, there are extra charges, and you need to talk to your reseller partner about those or talk to Bob about those. Question, in the demo you scanned each box individually. Can you count all the items and scan once?
Most
Justin?
certainly. You can scan the item once and then just enter in the total quantity. In my case, I was just trying to do it for an illustration purpose so you could see the multiple tags in the tag batch. But whatever you guys are comfortable with in doing, you have a lot of different options here in how you can count. It's not so important how you do it, but to make sure that you're getting it done and making sure you keep your inventory accurate.
Okay, next question. Can you create a new bin number while you're entering the counts?
Absolutely. We allow you to create and add items on the fly, and ultimately when the posting is complete, all that should work out, and those items should now show up as available in that item. But yes, we will add bins as needed, because ultimately when you're doing the count, the general assumption is that that item is there when you did the count.
Okay, just a second here. Let me see, what else have I got? Let's see, we talked about serial counting and bins. Do you still relieve inventory through production orders? Justin, you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I mean, inventory, if you're using our software to do production orders, inventory is being relieved through production, either in a backflushed or issue model. Our production model supports both. So inventory should be relieved in real time with any application we have.
Okay, let me see. David Wirtz wants to know, do you manually have to update the pallet ID quantity? I would think you'd have to verify it, wouldn't you?
We want you to manually enter in the pallet quantity. Once again, this is an item that is available for tailoring. If you guys had specific information you wanted to see in there, I'm sure Ann would be happy to get you in touch with one of our consultants to get that so you have the pertinent information on the screen. But yes, we make you validate the quantity today as kind of like a blind double check.
Okay. Let me see. There's lots of questions here. Some I'm just answering.
Yep, I see one here.
Talk to Bob or something.
How do you handle an item that is in the wrong bin? Was one that just popped up. We handle those items by essentially, when you do your counting, we're going to put the item in the proper bin, and if the item should have been in that bin and isn't, it's going to show up on those variance reports, and you can make the determination of if you need to recount or post that through and just basically remove the record of that item being in that bin.
Okay, here's another question. We count by picking sequence, not bin. Will the software still work?
Yep, you would basically, if you're not binned, we could add the picking sequence to the screen, guide you through it that particular way. Bins in Macola are a layer. It would be more like counting the bolt item than it would be any of the other examples I showed you today. But you'll essentially enter in the item number and the count. We could display the pick sequence. That once again would just be a matter of exposing the field on there. Just let somebody in our support group know, and we can talk to you offline about what that would entail.
Okay. The next question: can you complete transactions while you while cycle counting and you have frozen your inventory?
That is a double-edged question. The answer is yes, you can continue to transact. If your cycle counting is going to go over multiple days, you need to be real careful. Your frozen inventory, your cycle count will obviously adjust off the day that your inventory was counted, but you just want to make sure that you're testing it thoroughly for your situation, because based upon how you guys run your operation, you might not have enough time to review your variances, get out there and recount those items that you need to recount, and still post in an effective amount of time.
And I don't think most people would freeze inventory for a cycle count. They would freeze inventory mostly for a physical count, I would think, Justin, wouldn't you?
It depends on the company. Depends on the company and how their business is operating. Distributors versus manufacturers almost always do it differently from what we've seen.
Okay. All right. Let's see what else we have. Can you post before errors are corrected, or are you asked to make corrections first?
You really should make the corrections prior to posting inside of Macola.
And the next question is a lovely one from Victor. Is there any history report of cycle count to evaluate variances over a period of time?
We do keep an audit trail of cycle counting, but I, at this particular point in time, can't tell you to what degree we keep that information. It certainly could be done,
I believe we do post to a history. There's a history tag file created, I do believe.
We do have a tag file, which is kind of an audit file for that, but I just don't know that we have anything to evaluate that over a period of time, or what the long-term purpose of that table will be. So, Victor, I will get back to you on that offline once I do my homework.
Okay, if something isn't scanned, will it show up as a variance? And if it isn't scanned, I would say yes, absolutely. It'll show up with 0 then.
Absolutely, it'll show up as a variance, both as a cost variance and account variance for you to investigate the root cause of and determine what you need to do.
Let's see if there's anything else. Bob, do you have anything else? I don't think there's any other questions that have come in.
There was quite a few up above, Ann. If you look
I see one here.
Been through them.
You can actually, all of the variance reporting that we showed you, one of the questions was, do we need to print the reports in WiSys or Macola? We don't want you to waste the paper inside of WiSys. We do give you the option to export everything to Excel, and it'll look exactly the way it looks on the screen. So you could certainly export that detail to Excel and print it if you really wanted it to. But our posting variance report should match the Macola pre-post report. So it's really optional if you guys need to print them at all, or you could just use the Agility variance reports.
There's a question about our security model, too. Trying to find the actual question. What is the security model, AD or separate setup, from Michael? Justin, you want to take that one?
Our Palletized software, it gets to be a little confusing. Our Palletized software uses a remote desktop connection. That portion of the software is an Active Directory connection. However, when you're transacting on Palletized, there is a user-level security that you set up inside of Agility, and that user-level security is what is ultimately going to hit your inventory transaction file and be used. So the Active Directory users for the handhelds are computer accounts in the Active Directory, whereas the username that you log into the handheld to is a separate set of security. Although, with the asterisk that I need to put in there, you can link a user to the Active Directory so that you have the same password in the Active Directory as they do in Palletized. But we'll put a pin in that. If you have a specific question relating to that, I'm happy to talk to you about your specific solution offline.
Because you can have multiple people that use the same gun.
Exactly. But there are options there, and if you need some advanced security, please give me a call directly, and I'll be happy to talk about that.
Okay. There was a question, a more generic question about emailing a link to the archive of the webinar. We are recording it, and we will be posting the recording at the earliest opportunity. I'm not quite sure when it'll be, however. Let's see. Here's one from Kathy. Scanning receipts auto-calculate the unit of measure conversion, or does it send receipt to Macola and then Macola converts to the inventory unit of measure?
We would actually display that on the gun to you as the unit of measure if there is a unit of measure. However, you're counting in your stocking unit of measure traditionally in Macola. So if you have a special circumstance where you need to do a unit of measure conversion, our software is more than capable of handling that. But traditionally when you're doing your cycle count or physical count, you're doing that in your stocking unit of measure, which should be fixed.
Okay, Victor wants to know if there's any way to flag a bin for a cycle count.
You can cycle count by bin, Victor, create a tag file and then select a particular bin and have it create extra tags for that bin as you do the cycle count. So you could basically direct a person to a particular bin. You're going to cycle count this bin today, and then create any tags that you would be missing and get a variance on that particular bin.
Okay, let's see. What else do we have here?
The reports will show you accuracy or dollar accuracy. There are subtotals, so you can see your accuracy for each cycle count. I'll get back to you on if we have a history where you can look at the trend over time, but you can certainly record those values on all of those reports. There are 2 or 3 different versions of them, either your variance by quantity or variance by dollar value.
Another question about licensing based on active occurrences, and we have concurrent licensing for the desktop for Agility. The guns are individually licensed. So there's a slightly different model there. That was from Marcia. Let's see, what else do we have?
Will is asking us, do we use the frozen inventory quantities in our calculations? The answer is yes. Macola will take those into account when it's doing its transactions. So do we. And yes, cycle count codes do work with our solution. You just generate your batch and specify the cycle count code, and it should mark your A items, B items, so on and so forth, or the inventory class specified in your item location file.
Victor wants to know if a picker, someone picking an order, finds a discrepancy, could we flag the bin for cycle counting? I suppose we could do something for that.
Victor,
it's not
nobody's
built in.
Yeah, nobody's asked us for that before. I think that's a wonderful idea. We'll get back to you on that. That's something we need to.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Okay, Josh has a question. When doing a serial count, would you need to scan each different UPC code for every item, or would you be able to simply scan the serial numbers regardless of UPC? This is Josh Lippincott.
You would actually scan the UPC once and then the serial numbers each time. So you don't have to scan the UPC over and over again. You're really looking for that serial number to be validated.
Because the serial number would link it back to the UPC code.
The serial number is validated against the item to make sure it's there or not there. And once again, there's a variance report that tells you if you scan the serial number that wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple more minutes. Let's see if we have any more questions. We have a suggestion, I think, from somebody whose name I can't read. It says, we flag the cycle count code from the floor to report bins that need a count. And then Josh is asking, if you are alternating between items, would you need to alternate the UPC? I couldn't assume so.
To that one, yes, you'd have to tell it what item you're counting because we need to validate the serial number against the item number.
Bob, you got any last things to say here? If people want pricing, they should be talking to Bob or talking to their reseller again. We had a great turnout today. Appreciate everybody's attention for this time.
We had a question, is it available to buy in Mexico? Yes, we have customers all over the world. That's definitely not a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, good. Got a couple people saying thank you. Thank you for coming. Bob, anything else from you or not?
No, I'm good. I think we've had a great turnout, and Justin, you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
It was. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this